Francis Ngannou is returning to MMA on October 19th against Renan Ferreira in his first ever PFL fight and his PFL debut. And now, given the fact that typically UFC fighters are a lot better than fighters from other organizations like PFL, Bellator, or One Championship, most people seem to think that Francis Ngannou is going to destroy this guy. He's going to mop the floor of this guy. And also, Francis is the lineal heavyweight champion. He never actually lost his heavyweight crown in the octagon. So this is pretty much the lineal heavyweight champion. He beat the guy who beat the guy in Stipe Miocic. And now, until potentially Francis loses his next fight and Thomas and John Jones fight each other, Francis is still the best MMA heavyweight on the planet. But does his opponent Renan Ferreira actually stand a chance at beating him? And I actually think he does. I think he is a dangerous fight for a guy like Francis Ngannou. And first of all, when you look at Francis Ngannou's UFC fighters that he beat guys like Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, and those are guys that had long careers. You know, they have been through some wars, injuries, and Francis was able to get them out of there relatively quickly. But those guys, you know, since they're a bit older, they weren't that much of a threat to Ngannou in terms of putting him out cold with like one punch. And then you look at guys like Cyril Gane and Stipe Miocic, and those are guys that they'll probably like, you know, finish you later on in the fight after they've kind of like broken you down, kind of like how Stipe broke down DC and then he finished him in the fourth round, or how Cyril Gane broke down Tai Tuivasa and then finished him in the third round. But now Francis Ngannou is in a position where he's up against a powerful guy who could potentially put him out with like one shot, or at least drop him with one shot. And the last time he fought someone like that was Derek Lewis in MMA. And in that fight, Francis didn't engage at all because of that Stipe Miocic fight. He must have been, you know, thinking about getting gassed out, and he lost his confidence and everything. But now we're going to see what he does against a guy who can potentially match his power. And also a guy who potentially could be more athletic than him. I mean, this Renan Ferreira guy, he's 6'8", with an 85-inch reach advantage, which gives him the height and reach over Francis Ngannou. But also look at this feat of just pure explosiveness from this guy. Fabricio Verdum had him on his back in the guard, and you know, Renan Ferreira was able to reverse him by just exploding out the position. He does get put in a triangle later on, but he's able to escape it, and that clip just shows like this guy is like, he is a crazy good athlete. Also, he's got some very powerful leg kicks whenever he's striking. He does throw kicks for a heavyweight. You know, Francis did struggle a bit with Cyril Gane's kicks. He wasn't really able to defend them too well because he does have he's heavy on his feet. His base is like pretty much on the ground, ready to just like swing and take your head off with punches. And also, Francis Ngannou, he's had this sort of check hook that he really likes to go for, like whenever an opponent tries to attack him. In the UFC, he did this in a few of his two boxing fights as well. And there was some times where he was getting outpunched by that straight right hand. And Renan Ferreira, he's got a very, very powerful straight right hand. And I believe there's multiple ways he can use that right hand. He can either like set it up with a jab to kind of get Francis Ngannou to throw that check hook. He can also throw it as an intercepting shot whenever Francis is like attacking you, because Francis does leave himself open with whenever he attacks with those last or right hooks. But also Ferreira can throw it as a backstep counter, kind of like how Stipe Miocic hit him with, because Francis, he throws a lot into his punches, so if he misses, he leaves himself wide open. But if he does land, that can cause some serious damage. But Francis Ngannou can definitely knock him out. I've seen Renan get like hurt before, and Francis is by far the hardest puncher that he will have ever fought, and the best fighter that he has ever fought. But the last reason why I think that Ferreira is a dangerous matchup for Francis Ngannou is because after Francis Ngannou's loss to Anthony Joshua, which was a tough loss, the first knockout loss of his entire career, Francis has blamed this loss on things that were outside of his control. And that is not good for anything. You don't want to look at things that are outside of your control to blame for something that happened to you. And Francis has said that apparently the host of the event for the Anthony Joshua fight, they were constantly bringing him to whether it was like the grand entrance, the press conference, the weigh-ins, the fight. They're constantly bringing him hours in advance to kind of get him tired, get him at the arena, just not really knowing what to do. And meanwhile, Anthony Joshua is just resting, doing whatever he needs, and then he gets to the arena in a reasonable time. And yes, that might have played a factor in the fight, but Francis has come out and said that first time he got dropped by Anthony Joshua, like that's a punch that he should have never got dropped by because it didn't feel like anything. And Francis has said that, after that second knockdown, I think he said he couldn't remember anything. And Francis was trying to look for reasons to explain that. And, I like Francis, but I believe that, Anthony Joshua, the punch power, the speed and the precision, just, like even if it didn't really feel hard at that moment to Francis, it did look like a hard punch. And, he's a boxer. He's trained his entire life to just hit things as hard as he could. And that could be why, he got dropped like that, and why he felt like he got hit by harder shots in the past by, fighters who probably didn't have the same precision and accuracy and speed as Joshua as it did. But regardless, I would have liked Francis to just say, wow, like I made a lot of mistakes. I got a lot of things I need to work on, instead of looking for things that were outside of his control. Because I remember Max Holloway did the same thing. He was saying, oh, well, I beat Volk. The judges just got it wrong. And then in the third fight, he made no adjustments and he got beat up pretty bad. So that's why I'm worried for Francis, and I hope he makes the adjustments, but he should still beat him.